All right, I see some folks streaming into the room here. We're just going to give this another minute or two. All right, so we do have just a couple of housekeeping things. Jacob, you want to give us kind of a roundup of that?
Yeah, sure. Welcome, everybody. We'll get this started as people are trickling in here. My name is Jacob. I'm a new account manager at CompuWorks. I've been here for about 4 months, got here in January, and it's been, a really great ride. Excited to come and do this training today. Just a few things here before we get started. We have just a few etiquette pieces here. The Q&A button at the bottom of the screen here, the video screen, you can use to ask as many questions as you need, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible during the hour, but we can stay after to answer some additional questions as needed. Also, within about a day after the webinar, we usually like to give out a survey. You can give your feedback and ideas of future topics, and we really appreciate that feedback. Coming up in May, you can always check out, this is May 24th here, but you can always go on our website and check out the upcoming events. On May 24th, we have the Microsoft OneDrive training. So there's all your OneDrive needs there, cloud sharing as well. And alongside me, I'd like to introduce our founding partner, Alan Bauman.
Thanks for being here, Jacob. We really appreciate your presence on the call here today. And I'm once again excited about this topic, although unlike other topics in the past, this is one that I think I know something about or a little bit more about than I do some of the newer 365 tools that Jolynn has gone through with us over the past year. And if you're new to Excel, this is a great place for you to be. I have to tell you that I feel like Excel is a lot like Word. It's one of those very foundational skills that really anybody that touches a computer should have some basic familiarity with. And I also think it's one of those things that once you understand a little bit about it, you start to see applications for it. And those applications are not only business applications, but sometimes in your personal life, wanting to do some personal finance work or do some math around a purchase of some sort. So I think this is a really great foundational skill for anybody to have. And one of the things that we'll talk a little bit more at the end, but we do have a part 2 of this coming up, and I believe it's in June, of a more advanced version of Excel. So, and as with all of our webinars, you can sign up for any of them by going to our website. All of the ones that we have scheduled are online and available for you to register. So, yeah, so without further ado, and I should say welcome, of course, to all of you. It's great to see. This is actually a great crowd today. We have a lot of people here, so there's clearly a good interest in this topic. So folks who have been on these webinars in the past will recognize our instructor, Jolynn Reen, who has been with us many times. Definitely a fan favorite. I love to have Jolynn here. She does a great job. There are some supporting materials that she provides to us, which we then provide to you in our training library. Jacob mentioned, this will be recorded and you'll be able to, view it, or if you have colleagues that, weren't able to attend, they can view it at our training library, and Jolynn's materials will also be there. And for those of you who don't know Jolynn, I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to her. She's been teaching Microsoft apps since forever. She is a certified trainer and Microsoft master instructor with over 30 years experience. She teaches on the basics to advanced features using programs like Teams, Excel, SharePoint, Outlook, and more. And welcome again, Jolynn.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Alan. So hello, everybody, as Alan just mentioned, and Jacob as well. Thank you, Jacob. We will be doing Excel 101 today. And so I opened up a workbook, and I wanted to first mention something about the workbook that I actively have open. I'm using the desktop version of the 365, just so everybody knows what version I'm actively using here today. What I wanted to start out with is really just kind of doing a general overview of what everything is actually called on the screen, because I have this feeling that if you're like most people that I've worked with in the past, we have a tendency of calling things what we want to call them, but Microsoft, of course, has a name for things. So I just want to do a general overview of what everything really is called. So starting at the top left, depending on your version and your setup, you will see a quick access toolbar. You have, of course, your ribbon going across the top. And just so you understand how the ribbon actually works, when I do a session, I usually will give you the name of the tab that I want you to go to. So as an example, I would say go to the data tab. And depending on, of course, what we're going to be working with, today I'm going to be talking about a feature called Flash Fill. So then I would tell you the name of the group and then the name of the command that I want you to find. So the ribbon is really organized very well to be able to quickly and easily find things based on the name of the tab and the name of the group. Now, I won't go into any other details about the ribbon. I'm sure you've been using it for quite a long time now. But I want to talk about what is underneath the ribbon. Sometimes there's a little confusion on what's going on right underneath the ribbon. On the left-hand side is actually called the name box. The name box is going to give you the name of your active cell, but it does a lot more than that. So if you attend that advanced session that Alan was mentioning a little while ago, in that advanced session, we're going to take that topic a lot further, but for today, we'll call it the name box, and we know that it's going to give us the name of our active cell. To the right of that is actually the formula icons, where we have the X, the check mark, and the FX. Not sure if you've ever used any of those before, but the X can actually be used like pressing the escape key. Let's say you are on a cell and you just start typing and you realize you're on the wrong cell. You can simply click on that X to cancel what you were doing. I usually press escape, but just so you know what the X is for. And then to the right of that is a check mark. I don't necessarily click on the check mark. I'm more of a keyboard person. I've been working with computers since before the mouse came out. I know that's aging me, but so what it does is as you are doing data entry, whether you're entering numbers, text, it doesn't matter. When you are done, your habit is usually to press enter. Press enter always moves you down one cell, keeps you in the same column that you were in, just moves you down. Well, what if you don't want to move down? If you go to a cell and you just start typing and you want to actually stay on that cell, do control enter. One option is the keyboard shortcut control enter. You'll stay on the cell and complete what you were doing. Otherwise, you could click that check mark that is in the formula icons area. That does exactly the same thing. To the right of that, of course, is the formula bar itself. Most people call the whole thing the formula bar, but the formula bar, of course, is where you will go to see the contents of the cell you're actively clicked on. If it's a formula that you're clicked on, the answer appears in the cell. The formula appears in the formula bar by default. Of course, that can be changed anytime I say that word default. But I want to talk about the columns and rows that we have. When we talk about the active cell that you're on, I'm on I2 right now, and I know that by looking at the name box, but I also know that by looking at the cell itself. The cell has a darker border around the outside edge, and you'll also see that your mouse shape changes. So as you actually move your mouse around, the mouse shape is going to change. And I'm going to focus on the cell that I'm actively on. I'm in a shape right now with my mouse called select, meaning that I can click and drag to select cells. So I can format them, copy them, cut them, whatever I need to do with them. But when you are on an active cell, if you have data inside that cell, you can do different things with that data. Whether you want to copy it, you can use what is called the fill handle at the bottom. On the right-hand side, if you hesitate at the bottom of a cell, you're going to get a T shape of your mouse. That specific shape is called the fill handle. The fill handle allows you to copy what you are selected on. So I just drug it down and it copied my name. Or you can use it to copy things like formulas or fill in information. And I'll do a demonstration of that here in a minute when we talk about doing some data entry. So you always want to pay attention to the shape your mouse is in, because if the shape that you have is you're on an active cell that has data in it, you can go to the outside border of that cell and get the cross where you're going to see that you have 4 arrows with a mouse arrow. That's actually a move handle. The move handle then allows you to click and drag and move the contents of a cell. So you always want to make sure you have the right shape before you start clicking and dragging, because you could get something totally different than what you had expected. We do have over 16,000 columns going across to the right. So when we look at those column letters, it goes all the way over to letters XFD. That's a very long way across, 16,387 or so. We also have row numbers going down the left-hand side. There's actually 1,048,576 rows going down. And that's for every sheet that you are using within the workbook. How many sheets can we have down at the bottom? You can see that on mine. I have totals, references, printing, etc. If you start a new workbook, by default, you get one sheet called sheet 1. You can rename your sheets up to 31 characters long, including uppercase, lowercase, spaces. You can have as many sheets as you want, but it's really kind of limited to the resources that you have on your computer. You want to make sure that all of your sheet tabs really are related to each other when they're inside the same workbook. You don't want to put something just random inside the workbook. Have the data all be related in some way, shape, or form. I want to talk about the very bottom of your screen. At the bottom is called the status bar. The status bar actually changes as you do different things. There's actually a ready at the bottom left. It should say the word ready. Ready means that you're ready to perform all actions within the program. But as soon as you go to edit a cell, to modify a cell, you want to add new information, it changes from the word ready to the word enter or edit. When you are in enter or edit mode, some of the commands on the ribbon will actually be grayed out. So as an example, if I'm on a cell that has data already and I click in the formula bar, at the bottom left, it now says edit. I'm in edit mode. And as you can see from my ribbon, a lot of things are grayed out at this time. So you want to kind of make sure that you are understanding what's really happening on the screen. Because a lot of times I'll get this call and they'll say, my commands are grayed out. I can't use them right now. And the first thing I always ask is, what mode are you in? MODE. So look at the bottom left, that will always tell you. Now, of course, as soon as I control enter or press enter, I'll go back to ready again. And like I said, your default is usually to press the enter key on its own, but of course that moves you down one cell. So the next time you go to do something, if you want to stay on the cell, give that keyboard shortcut a try. And if you don't remember what that first keyboard shortcut is that I told you, it's control enter. I'm very big on keyboard shortcuts because they really do save you a lot of time. I'm a big right clicker with my mouse, but if I'm already on the keyboard, why not use the keyboard shortcut? So when it comes to this status bar down at the very bottom of your screen, and I mentioned that it does change, if I select cells that have numbers in them, I will see what is referred to as the auto calculate down on the status bar, where it's by default showing me an average, a count, a numerical count, meaning how many cells actually have numbers in them. It gives me a sum. You can turn on and turn off different features from your status bar by simply right-clicking anywhere on the status bar. You'll get a pop-up menu, and that's in every Microsoft program, by the way, the desktop versions. And you can see that I have average, count, numerical count. I could also click in front of or click on the minimum and maximum to add them as well to the status bar. So anything with a check mark is actively turned on, or you can turn it off by clicking on it again. So depending on what you want to see or not see. Some things don't show up until you go to use them. If I click off those numbers, all of those auto calculates, of course, do disappear. Okay, just so you're aware of what's really happening on your screen. Now, a couple of other things that I want to talk about when it comes to actually working in Excel is doing data entry. It's very important to really understand data entry in Excel because there's definitely a lot of shortcuts to that. So let's say that you want to create a new worksheet and you want to be setting it up for each month, you're going to keep track of different things or days of the week and things like that. Let me give you some shortcuts to that. I'm going to click on the circle with the plus sign down in your sheet tab area to insert a new sheet. And then I'm just going to simply go to cell B4. And I'm going to say that I actually want to see the days of the week going across that row 4, going across to the other columns. I'm going to start with Monday. And I'm going to say I really only want Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because I don't want to track weekends. I can type the first whichever day of the week or whatever it is that I want, and then use that fill handle. I didn't even press enter. I'm going to the fill handle and I'm going to click and drag across. And as I'm dragging across, as soon as I release my mouse, you're going to see that it's going to automatically fill in the days of the week. These are actually called a custom list. And a custom list can be, it's part of Excel. And by default in the custom list, you'll get the days of the week, you'll get the months, and you'll get quarters. It knows that there's only 4 quarters to a Packer football game. So we can have those automatically filled in. We don't have to sit and enter them. Now, let me go to column A. I'm going to go to A5 and I'm going to say I want to have the months going down, and we're in April still. So I'm going to type April. Once again, I'm going to use my fill handle at the bottom right, and I'm going to click and drag down. Now, when I'm actually clicking and dragging down, it's filling in the months for me, starting with whichever one I started with. It understands Sunday through Saturday. It understands January through December. So after December, it repeats January again. So it's very smart. This is such a smart program that sometimes it actually scares me on how does it know? How does it know that I really wanted to do that? Now, just to demonstrate a couple of other autofill features that we have, I'm going to just click on a blank cell here. So I'll go to B5 and I'm going to put in today's date. And then I'm going to fill that down as well by using my fill handle. But then I'm going to, and what it's going to do by default is it's going to start with today, which is 4/26/22. And then when I fill it down, it's going to put in 4/27, 28, 29, etc. It's going to keep going down one day. But I'm going to actually change it. I'm going to actually click on an icon that will all automatically appear when I do this fill, and I'm going to change the dates by eliminating the weekends. I'm going to tell it I only wanted to fill in weekdays. So once again, I type today's date. I'm going to use my fill handle at the bottom right. I'm going to click and drag down. And as I see these numbers, it's just going down in sequence. When it gets to May, of course, it's starting with the 1st and continuing. But a lot of times when we do things in Excel, we're going to get this icon that appears at the bottom right. Anytime an icon just all of a sudden shows up, it's there for a reason. So you always want to click on it so you know what the choices are of what it's telling you. So if I go to the icon down at the bottom, it's for the autofill options, and it understands that I was doing dates. So it's asking me, what exactly did I really want to fill in? And I have choices like fill days, weeks, months, years. So I could actually have it do 4/26, 2023, 24, 25, etc. Whatever I might want. I'm actually going to choose fill weekdays. Now it's actually skipping over the weekend days. So if you don't want Saturdays and Sundays included, here you go. Here's your list. There's so many great things that we could be doing with that fill handle. Now, when I get to formulas in just a second, I'll talk about how to use that fill handle to actually copy formulas as well, depending on, of course, what your formula is. So built into Excel, we have several different tools that we can actually have the computer do so that we don't have to work so hard. Okay. Now, when it comes to this references worksheet, well, actually, I'm going to go to totals. I'm going to go to the worksheet that I have called totals, and I'm going to apply a little bit of formatting to this data. And when it comes to formatting, always think less is more, because just because we can use 16 million different colors doesn't mean we should. There's sometimes way too much formatting that happens. And I want to show you some shortcuts because I job shadow a lot of people to see if they need a new software and all these other things. And it's amazing to me how many clicks people use to do actions within Excel when we don't need to be doing so many clicks. So as an example, I'm going to say that I want to format all of these names. I select the names by clicking and dragging on them. And then I could, of course, go to the font group, the alignment group, the number group, and apply different formatting, like bold. I could change the font size. I could change the font. I could change the font color, where I have my 16 million different options. I have all of those choices, but you really want to think about, how do I want other people, if I'm sharing this workbook, how do I want other people to be able to actually be utilizing this data? How do I want them to be able to see it? So that's where that less is more. For some reason, my Excel just decided that it doesn't want to work right at this moment, but it will come back, I'm sure. So when it comes to applying this formatting, if I wanted it to be bold, I'm going to click B for bold. If I want to change the font, I click on the drop down and then I choose the font that I want. So if you sit and count how many clicks you're actually doing, you can come up with 10 to 15 different clicks to apply different formatting. If you want to change the font size, you're going to do that with clicks as well. So you want to kind of shorten that and think about, what really should I be applying? So I'm going to talk about row 4. Row 4 has headings to it. Otherwise known as labels to Excel, and I want those to be formatted as headings. I'm actually not going to use my font group, my alignment group, or my number group. I'm going to go straight to the styles group, where we have a gallery of choices that are pre-formatted options that we can be using to apply formatting. There's actually a section here called titles and headings. So I'm going to use heading 3. What that is going to do is apply the formatting for me. I'm going to click off the cell so you can see the formatting that it actually applied. It's Calibri, which is the default font, size 11. It's using bold, and it also has an underline going on the bottom of each of those cells, which is a border. And the border is a different color, and it's a different thickness, a different weight. That would have taken me several clicks to do on my own. I did it with one click. I clicked on heading 3. Let me give you one more format that is a one click versus multiple clicks, like 15 different clicks, and that's going to be row 9. I want row 9 to be my totals row, where in a second I'm going to do a couple of formulas. I'm going to select going from A9 through G9. And what I'm going to do is go back to this styles gallery of choices, click on the drop down for more, and on the right hand side, I'm going to choose total. What that is going to do is bold the cells that I have. It didn't change the font, but what it's actually doing is, it did change the font because I had Arial on there. It changed it to the default of the Calibri size 11, but also what it did was it gave me a single top border and a double bottom border, which are both blue. The default color, by the way, is blue. When we do things, if we're doing drawing objects or anything, there's some default colors that automatically come, and those are all based on your theme. Just so you know, we have a theme built in. And the theme is, in all your Microsoft programs, is the font and the colors that we get. So when I talk about colors, if I'm using my fill or my font colors, these are your little theme colors. So these are the colors that it uses by default. But this formatting is great to use to help emphasize certain things. And you can even format cells before you put data in the cells. I'm going to be adding some formulas to some of our cells. I'm going to format them before I create the formulas, and I'm going to format them with accounting. Accounting is going to give us a $sign, comma for thousands, and 2 decimals. I'm going to do 2 areas at the same time by using my control key. First, I'm going to select C9 through F9, but I also want to format in column G. So I'm going to hold my control key down, and I'm going to click and drag to select G5 through G8 so that I can format both ranges of cells at the same time. I'm going to go to my number group for my home tab, and I'm going to click on the $sign icon, which in this version will automatically give us accounting. Now I'm going to create some formulas to go in those cells, and they will automatically be formatted when I do that. Now, if anybody has ever created a formula in Excel, you're going to know that there are lots of different ways to do it. Let me show you a few different ways. I'm not going to go through every way today because I could spend the next hour going through just different ways to do a couple of formulas. But a very common way, because it depends on what it is that you want and how you want it to be organized, is just to start with your equal sign, which is a hidden code to the computer to let it know that you want to perform a calculation, and then simply put in the cell number, the cell reference for what cells you want to add together. So in this case, I want C5, and I'm going to use my plus sign to add. Then I'm going to do C6, C7, and I continue to put the plus sign in between each of the cells. Once I'm done adding all the cells, I don't put any more plus signs. I'm going to do Control Enter. Control Enter is going to complete the formula, but you're going to notice that the answer is a bunch of hashtags. That's actually a hidden code to the computer to let me know that the column is not wide enough to display all the data. So I'm going to go up to my column letters. I'm going to hesitate to the right of column C, in between C and D, because I want to widen column C, which, by the way, I might want to widen the Q1 through Q4 columns to be exactly the same. I'm going to do all of them at the same time. I'm going to make them all the same width. By selecting, going to the column letter, I'm going to hesitate on the column letter. I get a down arrow. I'm going to click and drag that across through column F. So I have all 4 of those columns selected. Now I'm going to put my mouse in between any of those columns, and I'll get a bar with arrows going left and right. I could double click to have it automatically widen the column to be as wide as the widest text in that column, or I could simply just click and drag. And if I click and drag, it's going to make each of those columns exactly the same width. So I'm dragging to the right to make it wider. Now they're all exactly the same because I had them all selected. Now, if I wanted to do that same formula for each of the other quarters, one way for me to do that is simply just copy the formula. But I don't need to do an actual copy command and then paste. I can use my fill handle to copy it. So I'm going to be on C9. I'm going to get my fill handle. I'm going to click and drag across to column F. And as soon as I release my mouse, it has automatically copied that formula across to the other cells, but it changed to the different column letters. So it changed from column C to D to E to F. The computer's smart enough to understand that we want to switch to different columns. It doesn't do a perfect copy paste of the actual first formula, which is pretty smart. Now, of course, there's lots of other ways that we could be creating these formulas. One option is to select the cells we want to add together and the blank cells that we want to put the answers in, and use a feature called the AutoSum. The sum function is the most common function built into Excel. Just so you're aware, there's actually over 400 functions built into Excel. The AutoSum being the most popular is because one of the biggest things we do in Excel is add numbers together. If you go to the ribbon to the Formulas tab, you're going to find a function library group where you're going to find all of the different categories for the functions. So this will help you narrow down what you might be looking for. So if you're looking for something that is text related, you're looking for logical type formulas, you're looking for financial, whatever category it is that you might need to go to, you'll be able to then find the different functions. So functions are going to be names or letters that describe what the function actually does. Like we have a match, we have a lookup functions where it can look up different information. We have text related functions where we could combine data together. We can separate data into different cells. There's a lot of different options. So just so you know, Excel is more than just adding, subtracting, multiply, and divide. It can work with text as well in formulas. So we'll do a little bit on that today, and we'll do a little bit later. But basically what I'm wanting to use is the AutoSum, that Greek E icon, which is located on the Home tab as well as the Formulas tab, is what I'm going to use to get the totals over in column G. One way to do that would be to go to G5, put in my equal to start my formula, and then say C5 plus D5 plus E5 plus F5. Then I could copy the formula down. Actually, I would go to G5 to start that, but that's not how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it with a shortcut. I'm going to actually select C5 through G8 because I'm controlling what I want to select based on these are the numbers I want to add together. And the reason I would have to do it this way, because some of you may be wondering, why doesn't she just go to G5 and click on AutoSum? Well, there's a column with employee number, and I don't want the formula to add the employee number with the quarters. So what I'm going to do now is click on the AutoSum button, and in column G, I now have the formulas to add each of those numbers going across each row. And it is not including the employee ID number in column B. That's why I'm actually getting these triangles. There's a green triangle at the top left of my cell. Remember when I said an icon that just all of a sudden appears? It's there for a reason. Well, I'm going to select these totals because all 4 of them have the same triangle for the same reason. To the right of that, I can see that I have this exclamation mark icon. I'm going to click on that drop down and it's telling me what is wrong. So that triangle is actually telling me I have something wrong on these cells. And basically what it's telling me is that I'm omitting a cell in these formulas, meaning it saw another number in the column to the left and it assumed I should have been adding those numbers, but I meant to exclude those. So I can simply click, I'm going to click on ignore error, and those triangles will disappear. So because they were true, I mean, that's exactly what I wanted it to do. But those triangles could be a little annoying. They wouldn't print, they're non-printing characters. But if you want to get rid of them, that's how you do that. So if you ever have that come up, I'm going to do another formula. I'm actually going to go to the references worksheet. I'm going to show you the AutoSum again, 2 different ways. I'm going to select column F again, where I have F5 through F8. This particular set of data does not have the employee ID number. So I can simply click on the AutoSum button and it will automatically calculate the numbers going across. Pretty easy, isn't it? The AutoSum is something that you will use regularly. So they make it very simple and easy for you to use. But I'm going to do a different way to calculate the totals that I want to appear in row 9, just to show you another option that you have. I'm going to select B5 through E8, B5 through E8. So I'm selecting the range of cells that I want to add together. When you select a range of cells, you're getting an icon that appears at the bottom right. This is called your quick analysis. When you select a range of cells, Microsoft assumes there's certain things that you want to actually do with that data. And so it gives you this quick analysis. When you click on it, you will see that you have a tab up at the top for formatting, where we could do different data bars, color scales, which are part of conditional formatting, which we'll do that in the advanced class. We have charts that we could create. We could have totals we can create. We could create tables, or we can create spark lines, which are little mini charts that appear on a cell. What I want are totals. I can have this quick analysis create a formula for me, and it can put it at the bottom of the selected range. So if I hesitate on this icon for sum, it's automatically giving me a sum in the row below my selected range. So if I click on sum, I can see in row 9, I now have a sum for each one of those columns together. It's pretty easy. It's pretty smart. But I do want to break apart this formula that I did create with this sum feature, because it's a little bit different than equal this cell plus this cell plus this cell. What it is doing, if you look at my formula bar, it's got the equal at the beginning because that's required, but then it's got the function name and then a set of parens. Inside the parenthesis is going to end up being what are called the arguments. Some formulas will have multiple arguments, and arguments are different sections to the formula, and they will be separated by a comma if you have more than one. Let me give you an example of that. I'm going to click on just a blank cell, and I'm going to say that I want to add together random cells, and I actually want to do it with the AutoSum because it's going to start the formula for me. I click on the AutoSum, it looks above me and it sees a number and assumes I want to add that number. But I'm going to replace it with B5. Then I'm going to put in a comma and I'm going to say I want D7, comma. I could say I want E5. So I could take individual cells and add them together with the AutoSum just by separating them with a comma. So they are separate arguments. When I'm done, Control Enter, and I will be able to widen my column to see the answer because I got the hashtags again, so the column wasn't wide enough, but I can see the answer to adding those separate cells together. Keep in mind, there's always multiple ways to do the same things, always, okay? I want to do an example of a date function for you. I'm going to go to the dates worksheet and do a couple of different things on this sheet. One of them is I'm actually going to go to cell E1. Dates are very popular functions that we can use. So it's not just numbers that we could be calculating. I'm going to say that I want to have today's date on cell E1. And every time I come into this workbook, I want it to say whatever the current date is. I can do that with a formula called today. So I'm going to do an equal. I'm going to type the letter T. I could have gone to the categories to find it, but I'm going to type the letter T. When I do that, I start to get a list of functions that begin with that letter. This is called an auto list. I'm going to type an O because I know it starts with TO. It's the only function that has those letters. I'm going to double click on today, or I could have pressed my tab key because I was on it, and it gives me a left paren. This particular formula has no arguments, so all it wants is the right paren. So I'm going to put in that right paren. I'm going to do Control Enter, and I'm going to get today's date. Now, if I save this workbook and I come in tomorrow, it's going to automatically say the 27th. It's going to always be updating. But I'm going to use that in a formula. I'm going to use today's date in a formula. And then I want to be calculating the years of service that each of these employees have given the company. And I'm going to do that with two functions. I'm going to do it with the year function because I want years of service. I'm basically going to be taking E1, where I have today's date, and subtracting the data higher coming from column C. I'm going to want to have the same formula for all of my employees. So I'm going to copy it down with my fill handle. So I'm starting on E4 for Erica Decker, and I'm going to create a formula to calculate her years of service. So I typed equal Y. I'm going to double click on year, and it wants me to give it what is the first serial number. Serial numbers are dates, by the way. The computer sees it as a serial number. We see it formatted as a date. And I'm actually going to use E1. I have to close that with a right paren. So I'm basically saying, take the date that is on cell E1, and we're going to subtract it. I'm putting in the minus sign for subtract. I'm going to do exactly the same function. I'm going to put another year function in there because I want years of service. This will look at the years of the dates, not the physical days instead. And this time I'm going to choose C4. Close it off at the right paren. So I'm basically saying take the date from E1 and subtract the date from C4 and give me the years difference. I'm going to do Control Enter, and there's 37 years that Erica Decker has been with the company. Now I'll get rid of the decimals by going back to my home tab, and I'm just going to format this. I'm going to change it from number up at the top, click on the drop down and do general. I want it to just be a general number. I don't need decimals. So now I have the years of service for the first employee. I'm going to copy this down by getting my fill handle. I'm going to double click on it instead of clicking and dragging because it knows to stop at the end of my list. But I'm actually getting errors. Anything that starts with a hashtag and then has letters behind it, those are actually errors. What it did was it copied it exactly the way I told it to. It's moving from E1 to E2 to E3 to E4 going down the list. It's also moving from C4 to C5 to C6, but that's okay. If you want to copy a formula, but you want it to stay on a specific cell and not change it when you copy it down, you can turn that cell into what is called an absolute reference. An absolute reference will lock that cell down. And how we do that is by putting a $sign in front of the letter and a $sign in front of the number for that specific cell. Then when you copy it down, it will lock on that cell. Now I'm going to do it with a shortcut. I'm going to click in my formula bar behind E1, and there's a keyboard shortcut to put those $signs in front of the E and a $sign in front of the 1. And the keyboard shortcut is actually your F4 function key, your F4 function key. I have to use my FN because I'm on a laptop, my fun key with my F4. I call it the fun key. Now, once I have that, I can do Control Enter because it has the $sign in front of the E and a $sign in front of the 1. So I'm going to do Control Enter and I still get exactly the same answer. But now I'm going to copy it down again with my fill handle. I'm going to double click on it. And now I'm getting the correct answers because every single one of these is using that E1 with the $signs. But the C column, of course, is changing to the next row down for each person. That works great. That works great. Now I'm going to do just a couple of other things here in this dates worksheet for you. I'm going to actually go to the extension column. We want to use column G for the extension for each of our employees. And one way to do that is the extension is actually coming from column F. In column F, it's the last 4 digits. And what I'm going to do is show you 2 different ways that you can actually have the computer grab those last 4 digits and populate it all the way down. One way is with a formula. The advantage of doing it with a formula is a formula will update if changes are made to the original cell. So let me show you a formula that would be able to grab those last 4 numbers. It's actually a text formula. It's actually called write, R-I-G-H-T. So I'm going to do equal R-I, and you'll see the write function. And to the right of that, it actually gives me a description. It says it returns the specified number of characters from the end of a text string. So it's looking at the right-hand side of whatever cell I tell it to look at. Then I have to tell it how many characters I want from that right-hand side. So I need to choose the cell. So I'm going to say, oops, I'm sorry, I have to go back in there. I forgot to double click on my write. So when I'm in this write function, the first thing that it wants is what cell has the text that we are going to look at. So I'm going to click on F4. Comma, to separate my arguments, I have to tell it how many characters I want from the right-hand side of cell F4. I want 4 characters. So I'm going to put in a 4, I'm going to do a Control Enter, and it automatically is going to give me the extension, that 2099, because that was the last 4 numbers coming from column F. I can copy this formula down by using my fill handle, and it's going to grab the last 4 digits from the right-hand side of cell of column F. Each one of those 4 digits. That's one way to do that. This is a benefit using a function to do this formula, to grab that, because if those extensions are going to ever change, the formula will automatically update. So if I go in and change the extension for this first employee, it will automatically update in column G. But what if this is data that doesn't change? I'm going to go to column H and I'm going to grab the name of the building from column F. where it says Lab Central HQ, but I'm actually going to use a feature from the Data tab of the ribbon. It's called Flash Fill. Flash Fill follows the pattern you give it, and then it will fill all the way down your list automatically. I'm going to start on H4. Erica Decker is in the lab. I'm going to type lab, L-A-B. I'm going to Control Enter to stay on that cell. So the first person I enter in, then I go to my Data tab of the ribbon. In the Data Tools group, I'm going to click on the icon called Flash Fill. When I click on that, it follows my pattern all the way down. It's really smart. Remember when I told you that a little while ago? This is
I just have to stop you, Jolene, because I'm blown away by this. I mean, I've been using Excel for 30 years and I've never known about that.
This
Great
is one of
info.
my favorite features. One of my absolute favorite. I used to use the text functions all the time, but I got to tell you, this is smarter than you even might think. Let me carry on. Let me do one more example for you. But can I tell you a problem though first? The problem with doing this is if that data changes, if Erica Decker moves to the headquarters building, it's not going to update to say headquarter instead of lab. That's the downfall of this, but I could reflash fill again if the data changed. But let me show you another great feature that it does. I'm going to go to column I. We have two columns, first and last name. Notice that the last name and the first name columns, A and B, they're capitalized. I don't want them to be capitalized, and I want to combine them together. I actually want it to give me their full name, first name, space, last name, and I want them to be title case. All I have to do is type it in the pattern I want it. So I'm going to type Erica space Decker with just capitalizing the first letters of her name. I'm going to Control Enter to stay on that cell because it looks at whatever cell you are on. I'm going to click that flash fill icon again, and it populates everybody's names going all the way down. Combined their first and their last names, and it followed my pattern with the different casing. Isn't that awesome? That's something that I use on a very regular basis because I'm needing to separate or combine data together all the time because I do a lot of work with data and cleaning things up and stuff. Love this. To me, this is fantastic features. It's crazy what we get. Okay, so the feature is called Flash Fill. It doesn't work with absolutely everything. So if you go to do it and it doesn't work, first check your spelling. Make sure that you entered the correct number, you entered the correct text, because if it's misspelled, of course, it can't follow the pattern. That's the first thing to check. But I've had it with a couple of weird things. It wouldn't work. So kind of depends on what it is that you're working with. But you have an alternative. You could also use different types of text related functions. There's one more function I'm going to do with you today, and I'm actually going to go back to the totals worksheet. And the last function that I'm going to work with today is actually going to be an average. I'm going to go to the cell B12. I'm going to widen this column out just a little bit. And I'm going to use the second most common function in Excel based on a survey. It's the word average. We can get an average of a range of numbers by using the function name average. There is not an abbreviation for this. It is the full word average, but we have shortcuts to using it. One of the shortcuts is I could just simply start with equal, type the letter A, type a letter V, and it's going to show me a list of functions that begin with those letters. I could then double click on average, and it's going to start the formula for me. By double clicking on it, it fills it in for you, gives you the required left paren after the function name. Otherwise, I could have physically typed it all myself. That's one way to do it. But let me actually cancel that. And let me show you one other way that you can actually do that. I'm going to go back to the formulas tab, or I could go to the home tab of the ribbon. And when you look at your AutoSum, there's a drop down arrow for the AutoSum. From that drop down, you can do the common functions, sum, average, count numbers, which is actually a count function. And then we have a max and a min to get the largest and smallest numbers. If I click average, it's going to start the average function for me, but it's going to look up and assume I want to add the cells above me. But if I don't want those cells, I want a different range of cells, all I have to do is select the cells or physically enter them. We use a colon to say we want to go from this cell through this cell. We don't say this cell, comma, this cell, comma, this cell, comma, this cell, especially what if you had 10,000 cells? It's easier to put the first cell, colon, and then the last cell. But if we click and drag them, the computer does the work for us. Let me show you. We want to get the average of all of our Q1 through Q4 numbers. So I'm going to take my mouse and click and drag to select the cells, starting with C5 over to F8. So it automatically populates that in the formula I was creating. It says C5 colon F8. I don't have to do anything else. Control Enter, and I have my average. And because of the fact that I did it as a formula, it will change if any of my numbers change. Any cells that are related to that a cell that I changed, the formulas will update. So if I go to C5, and we had Kendra James' numbers wrong, she really had 10,000. If I type 10,000 on cell C5, as soon as I press enter, it's updating the sum in row 9, it's updating the total over in column G, it's updating the average. So everything related to it is automatically going to update. One last thing about formulas that I want to talk about, because there's some rules that have to be followed when we create certain types of formulas. And a very common mistake that some people make is they forget what we were taught in elementary school when it comes to our order of precedence, otherwise known as order of operations. I'm going to simply just go to cell C11. And I'm going to create a formula that is, I want it to add together C9 plus D9 and then multiply it by 2. I'm going to do it with the equal. I'm going to say C9 plus D9. Asterisk is for multiply when we are wanting to multiply a number. I'm going to put in 2. And depending on what I really want for the answer, this wouldn't be correct. Normally, I would want to say, add these two numbers together first, take the answer to that and multiply that by 2. If I don't put parens around the C9 plus D9, it's going to multiply before it adds. Because if you remember your order of operations, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. That's what I was taught anyway. I know I'm old school, but so what we want to do instead, I'm going to edit this formula in the formula bar. I'm going to add a left paren in front of the C9. I'm going to add a right paren at the D9. Then it's going to do anything in parens first. Then it's going to do so the order goes, anything in parenthesis gets done first, then your exponents, your multiplication and division, your addition and subtraction. So now it's going to add these together, then it's going to multiply. So I'm going to do Control Enter, and I'm going to get the answer that I was really looking for. If I didn't do the parens, I would have gotten a totally different answer. So we have to really kind of think back. If we were going to do this on paper, how would you do it on paper? We have to physically do it in Excel that same way. It's smart, but it's not that smart. Okay. Now, the last thing that we're going to do till the end of the class here is I'm going to go to a worksheet called Sort Filter. And this is just a bunch of employee information where we have their employee ID number, their SSN, division, etc. Excel is more than doing formulas. A lot of times that's what we're using it for budgets and different things, inventory numbers, all that, orders, whatever. But it can do a lot with just data, sets of data. So we have this list of data here for all these employees, and I really only want to see the employees that are in the executive department, or maybe I want to see the national sales or whatever the case might be. I can do that by filtering this data, and I'll be able to sort this data as well. So when you have a list of data and you only want to see specific records of information, by the way, a record means each row matching a criteria. So everything in a row together is related to each other. We can turn on filters. An easy way to do that is to go back to your data tab. I spend a lot of time on the data tab because I work with a lot of data, but I can simply just click on the filter icon and it's going to give me drop down arrows for each of the headings in that row 3. It understands that this is my range of cells because I don't have any blanks separating this data. It takes the top row and assumes it's the headings, and it gives me a drop down arrow. From that drop down arrow, I'm going to go to department, and I'm going to get a unique list of all of my different departments. If I don't want to see everything, I'm going to uncheck the select all. I can click in front of the department or departments that I want to see and click OK. It will limit my list to only showing me the records that match that criteria. It changes your row numbers on the left-hand side. Notice they're blue. It's basically hiding all the other rows. If you look at the status bar at the bottom left, remember how I said it changes when you do different things? It's telling you that there are 4 of a total of 40 records that match that criteria. So you get a count of how many records matched your criteria. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to unfilter. I'm going to put all the records back again by going back to the drop down for department. I'm going to click clear filter from department. Let's say that I decided I want to sort the records of information based on their region. I can do that multiple ways. One way is to go to the region column, click on the drop-down arrow at the heading for region, and I could choose sort A to Z or Z to A. Or if I didn't have my filters turned on, I could simply click inside that column under the heading on any cell under that column, and I could go to the data tab. On the data tab of the ribbon, I can click A to Z, and it's going to sort based on that specific row or that column. So now I have east and I have home, then I have north, south, west, etc. going down. And what it did was it kept everything in the row together. So it sorted the entire row, not just that one column. So a lot of times we want to sort our information to have it look differently than how it was originally entered. Very easy to do so by using that data tab. I usually turn my filters on when I'm working in a list like this because I'm most likely going to be doing sorting and filtering. Now I'm actually going to do 2 filters at the same time. I'm going to say that I want to see certain divisions of information, and then I'm going to choose a region as well. We can filter a filter to really narrow down exactly what we want to see. If you're a database person, is a query to query a query? Here we just call it a filter. So I'm going to start on division by clicking on the drop down arrow. I'm going to uncheck the select all, and I'm going to say I only want to see sales and marketing and support. I'm clicking in front of 2 different categories, and then I'm going to click OK. So now I'm just seeing the records related to those, but I only want to see if the region is the home region. I don't want all the other regions. So I'm going to go to the region, click on the drop down. I'm going to uncheck the select all, and I'm just going to click home. Then I'm going to click OK. So now it's filtered to just show the records that started with the division being either sales or marketing or support, and then the region had to be home. So I just filtered a filter so that we can really narrow down exactly what we want to see in this list. Then of course I could print it, I could copy it, paste it into an email or whatever else I might need to do with it. But I can see down at my status bar, I have 9 out of 40 total records based on that criteria. I'm going to go back to the division again, and I'm going to clear that filter. I'm going to clear the filter from division. But as you can see, for that region, it's still on home. It only cleared the one filter. If I want to bring back all of the records again, all I have to do is go back to the region, click on that clear filter from region, and it's automatically going to give me all those records back again. So when you have a list of data, we don't always have to be using formulas with that list. We can be taking advantage of several other options as well, including filters and sorting. If I'm done with filtering and sorting and I don't want to leave that on, I could just simply go to the filter icon again on the ribbon and turn it back off so that I'm just looking at a regular set of data. Okay, that was actually the last topic we were going to discuss today. Are there any questions, Alan, that we got from anyone?
Oh yeah, we have a few questions here, Jolynn.
Great.
And first of all, there's been a couple requests for a cheat sheet, and we will have even more than a cheat sheet for you. Jolynn has put together a really nice package of information that just kind of walks through everything that she's covered today,
Yes.
including, I believe it's exactly this spreadsheet, right, Jolynn? This sort of
Yes, it
sample
is.
spreadsheet. So if you wanted to actually work with this data for practice, you'll have that available to you along with the recording of this webinar. That should all get posted to our website probably by tomorrow. We've got to get the recording wrapped up. And the link to that training library is in the chat if you want to copy that, or you can just go to our website and hunt it down. It's not too hard to find. So yeah, a couple questions here. So I wanted to just start out with this one, Jolynn. So you know, you mentioned some tabs across the bottom or some worksheets across the bottom of the screen there. And so you were working with numbers that were really just on one of those worksheets. Can you work with numbers that are on multiple worksheets?
Absolutely. Good question. I'm going to go to the Q1 worksheet, and I have a worksheet set up that I want to add together all of each individual salesperson's total sales coming from the January, February, and March worksheet. That can be easily done by starting where you want your answer to appear. So if I want to add together all of Kendra James Q1 totals from the 3 separate months, I start with an equal. I click on the worksheet tab that I want to go to. Then I click on the cell. So here I'm going to find the total sales for Kendra James, which is B6. Then I'm going to do a plus sign, just like I did before. I'm saying I want to take this cell plus. Now I'm going to go to the February sheet tab. I'm going to click on the cell that has the totals for Kendra James again. I'm going to do another plus sign. I'm going to go to the March worksheet. I'm going to click on the B6, which is Kendra James totals again. Then I'm going to press enter. Enter is going to take me back to where I started, and I will have the formula adding together 3 different cells from 3 separate worksheets. Technically, I could have gone to a different workbook to a sheet to a cell as well. But when you look at the formula in the formula bar, it's going to give the name of the sheet, exclamation mark to separate the cell, plus the name of the worksheet, exclamation cell, etc. going across. Good question.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so here's a question that's sort of near and dear to my heart because I've experienced this too. And you didn't really cover this today, but you know, sometimes we'll create a formula and we'll get an error, and the error is that you have a circular reference. And
Oh,
I always
yes.
felt that that's kind of cryptic, and it, you know, sometimes confuses me. Can you explain to us what that is?
Yes, what a circular reference is you're trying to use a formula that includes the cell you're actively on. So if I, as an example, if I go to B5 and I say equal 150 plus B5, I'm going to get a circular reference because I'm trying to use the same cell that I'm actively on. So it's telling me there are more than one circular reference. I'm going to click OK, and it down at the bottom on the status bar, it actually is telling me which cell has the circular reference. If I look at that, it didn't give me an answer because it can't compute something based on the cell that you're actively on.
Yep,
okay.
That makes sense. So we have a couple of questions about formatting.
Sure.
So styles, you talked about
Yes.
header styles and things like that. Are there ways to create custom styles or modify those built-in styles?
Great question. Absolutely. Just like with Microsoft Word, which is where I use styles the most, if I go back and I'll just stay right here. Let's say that I have this cell A3 that has this special formatting. If I look at it, it's Arial, size 14, it's bold, it's got a blue background, it's got white font to it. When I look at these styles, I'm going to click on the drop-down arrow next to it for the more. When I look at all these built-in styles, that isn't what I want. I want to continuously be using the formatting that is on the cell that I'm on. I can actually click on New Cell Style at the bottom of this dropdown. When I do that, I can give it a name and then choose the formatting that I want to have applied, or it will use what I already have on the cell that I'm on. So when I see that style name there, I'm going to name this blue bold or whatever I would want to call it. And then down at the bottom, I can see it's a general formatting for number. It's got the alignment that I had. It's got the Arial 4 bold white, and then it's got a bottom border. It's shaded. All of that is exactly the properties for the cell that I was on. So if I click OK, I now have that saved as a style. If I want to use that on a different cell in any of my sheets, because it's available everywhere, I go to the cell, I go to my drop down for my styles, and I can actually see it up at the top in my custom group where it says blue bold. Click on it and you get the same formatting. Okay.
So kind of the same question about themes. I think we've all sort of seen the same sort of default Microsoft theme. And so one question is it possible to change that?
Absolutely. So let me I'll go back to the sort and filter, and I'm going to clear the formatting in this entire sheet. Actually, I'm going to select all, and then I'm going to do a clear. So I'm going to go, I don't want any formatting on here right now. I'm going to click on the drop down for clear, and I'm going to say clear formats. So it's just giving me the raw data. If I use any formatting, I can go to the drop down, choose whatever formatting, what font do I want to use? I can choose colors, whatever the case might be, and it's giving me all my defaults. So my defaults are all being used. Well, if you want to have a different default, you don't want to be using everything that is here. You want to be using something totally different. I'm going to change this to all be the default of the Calibri size 11, which is our normal. And then I'm going to apply a style to that row 3. I'm going to go to the drop down and I'm going to choose heading 3, like I did before. But if I go to my page layout tab, on the left-hand side, I can click on themes. There are built-in themes, or you can create your own, but always check out what's here first. As I hesitate on the names of these other themes, watch my cells. They're all changing the colors and they're changing the fonts to match whatever that theme is. So I clicked on one of them and it automatically has updated my row 3 and everything else to match it. If I click on a cell in row 3, I go back to the home tab, I can see what font is actually being used. If I look at my colors, they're all matching my new theme. And that's in every Microsoft program. We use it the most in PowerPoint. I use it in Word every day because I match up with my styles and changing my themes and stuff around. So page layout, go to your themes and you can see all of the built-in options, or you could be creating your own. But the default is always your Office theme in every program, even Access. Okay.
All right, last formatting question, and this is something I used quite a bit, is the format painter.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what that does?
Oh, absolutely. So let's say that you have formatted a cell. So if I go to the home tab and I do italicize, I use a border drop down of some sort. I change the line color, whatever the case might be. Okay. So I'll just do a little bit on here just so you can see something. I'll change to a different color. Whatever formatting you have on that specific cell can be repeated by using the format painter. If I want that same formatting on other cells, you click on the cell that has the formatting, go to the home tab of the ribbon, click on the format painter brush in the clipboard group. Your mouse now becomes a paintbrush. You can then click and drag to select the cells you want to apply that formatting to. So it takes whatever the current formatting is on your cell and applies it. Okay.
I find that very useful for me.
Me too.
Okay, this is the last question I have. So if anybody has anything that they want to ask Jolynn, this is the time to get those questions in. So the last question I have is you brought up the formula library, and we talked about how many different formulas that are built into Excel. And Excel is really this vast program that does so many different things. How do you begin to even know what it's capable of doing? And I mean, you can't just memorize all this stuff, right? And what's your suggestion on that?
Well, one of the things that I have done is I'll go to the formulas tab. And if I have a specific category that I want to focus on, I'm going to choose date and time as an example. When you hesitate on these date and time functions, or any of the functions, to be honest with you, you're going to get a screen tip. That screen tip is going to show you the syntax of that formula and give you a brief description of it. If you wanted to learn more about that specific function, click on Tell Me More. The Tell Me More is going to open up the help. From the help, you can drill into the different categories to a specific function, whatever it is that you might be looking for. So if I go to financial functions and I want to know more about the PMT function, I can scroll down to the PMT function, click on the actual name of it, and I'm going to get specific help for that function. The great thing about Excel help, which I still use to this day, because I'm not an engineer, I don't know how to use those formulas unless I look them up first, is it will break apart what the description is. It will break apart the syntax, which with each of the arguments. Sometimes they'll give you videos you can watch, but the best thing is they're going to give you examples of how to use them. 100% use Excel help, and you're going to see you can access help multiple places. Where I just showed you is one, but let me show you another one. I'm going to say that I'm going to do a sum if. So I'm going to click on a cell. I'm going to do an equal sum if as an example. I start the formula and I'm looking at the syntax underneath it where it says range, criteria, and sum range. And if I don't understand that, click FX. When you click on FX, it opens up what is called the function arguments window, where it's going to break the fields for your arguments. So it's got range, criteria, and then sum range. Notice two are bold and one is not bold. If it's bold, it's required. If it's not bold, it's not required. But how do you know that? Well, it's going to give you a description down at the in the middle of the window here. But what if I still don't get it? I don't know what I'm doing. Click on the bottom left, help on this function. It's going to take you to the internet, directly to the Microsoft help for that specific function, give you videos, break apart the syntax, give you examples of how to use it. This is, to me, is wonderful. These are my go-to things that I use.
That's
Hope
great.
that helped.
Yeah, super helpful. And of course, Google is your friend too. If you don't even really know where to begin, you can start with how do I calculate?
You can't
Sorry,
say Google.
is that a bad word?
Yeah, sorry.
Well, I use Google once in a while. So
Your
if
favorite
I don't,
internet browser.
yeah, if I don't even know where to begin with what's the name of the formula or function, sometimes
Oh.
I find it there.
Well, let me give you that example. If I just, on a blank cell, if I click FX, if I don't know what function I'm supposed to use or what category it might be in, I can go into the insert function. I didn't start a formula, I just clicked FX. Here I could actually type in what I'm looking for. Add numbers based on a criteria. As soon as I press enter, it's telling me to rephrase it, but add numbers as an example. It's going to show me a list of suggested functions based on the description that I gave it up at the top. Once again, if I need more information, I could read about it down here or go into help on that specific function. So this works great too.
That's awesome. I can't believe how much I learned today. This was fantastic,
Good.
Jolynn. So many things that, it's such a, like I say, a vast program. It's easy to find that you know your little way around it and you just sort of ignore everything else. So you definitely added a lot here for me. So a lot of great feedback from folks. I think it's going to just about wrap it up. As I mentioned at the top of the webinar, we do have the next session of this, sort of the Excel Beyond the Basics session happening in June. You can register for that on our website now. The registration is open, but before that in May on the 24th, we have a session on Microsoft OneDrive, which is another, very, very helpful topic if you're a 365 user. And of course, if you need help with anything to do with anything, you can always reach out and contact us. Jolynn is actually available to do private training. We've had some interest in that, so feel free to tap us on the shoulder if you think that is something that would be useful to you. And by the way, we really mostly invite clients to these. We want these to be useful learning sessions for you, not really marketing sessions, but feel free to invite your friends, your colleagues. We're happy to have folks that are they're your friends, they're our friends. So feel free to pass along the registration link and have them attend if you think it would be helpful. So with that, I think we're going to wrap up for today. And thank you, Jacob, and thank you, Joe Lynn. Great session.
You're welcome. Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.